Hi, my name is Leah Hansen, and today I have my astrology teacher, Victor. I've been working.
Really?
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are
Good.
you?
I'm doing good today. Thank you very much for asking. And I've been in Victor's internship with a few other students since August, and I'm learning and gobs of information. And being a massage therapist for almost 20 years, I work in women's health, and I've talked to women a lot about sex and libido, and I'm really just curious how that shows up in a man or woman's chart. And so today we're going to be talking about sex and Mars and Venus, maybe an asteroid kind of coming up. We'll possibly look at some porn stars charts and maybe maybe like Pope Francis and some other popular figures like David Bowie. But I think Victor has some people that he's thinking about sharing with. So go ahead, Victor. Let's learn today.
I've made a slide. I love my slides, so I made a slide about some sexual stuff. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna share my slides, and it could be giving us a little bit, you know, something to read as well for your viewers. When we have a look at sex in the chart, it's a little bit of a complication because it is very important to take into the personal chart into account. So today we're going to be talking about more of a generic type of things. And therefore, it might not apply for you all the time, obviously, because there are so many connections in between planets. Obviously, the ruler of each of your houses might be falling in somewhere else in the chart. But overall, when we talk about sex, we definitely have to look at the placement of moon, especially in a female's chart, because moon is going to be an indication of your emotional needs. Moon is going to be an indication of how much foreplay, for instance, you need in order for you to be able to, open up to your partner and then give your soul to the person. Also, moon is going to be an indication of how secure you feel when you are in a sexual intercourse with someone. So obviously, moon has got some sign basement which are not so good for her. So such as moon in Scorpio or moon in Capricorn. Those two signs have got the tendency to clear the wall in front of them. And therefore, it is always going to be very important to have as much foreplay as possible because they are going to take off their, insecurities. They need to get rid of their insecurities first in the relationship. To be frank, if we talk about sex, I think it is something which people don't really like talking about. However, it is extremely important. In my opinion, a good 50% of a relationship is based on your sexual communication and sexual experiences with your partner. And I've been working with astrology for a good 20 years, and I've seen in so many cases that, because people are not able to express their sexual needs, the relationship just starts growing apart. So it is definitely a very interesting and a very much of a must topic to talk about and not to feel ashamed about it. I had a webinar a few months ago about sex, and some people were just speaking about it. So I'm not 100% sure whether they took it serious or it was just a little bit of an uncomfortable topic to talk about.
It,
But they were like, "Oh, Victor, it's quite interesting that you can talk about sex with a poker face." And I do believe it is important to be able to talk about it. So, but anyway, I'm a highly sexual person. My chart would reveal that, so it is never a problem for me to talk about it.
you know,
So,
I think talking about sex is really great and fun, and I'm a really curious person, and I love hearing other people's experiences with it as well. And in my life, I've gone through cycles of being a highly sexual and then long periods of time not having a libido or not having a partner. And I feel that just because I'm not having sex doesn't mean that I don't have this creative energy that just gets placed somewhere else instead of in a physical, intimate partnership with somebody. So I don't know if that topic will come up today as well.
Well, even if you think about what happens during sex, basically you are exchanging energy with someone. And obviously, from a biological perspective, plenty of hormones are getting released from the body. And those are something to do with happiness. Those happy hormones are getting released in the body. So basically, when you decide not to have sexual encounter with someone, it means that you are denying happiness in your life. So in my opinion, there are plenty of statistics out there. One of them I read is that a couple usually have sex 89 times a year, which if you really think about it, well, that's probably about twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not too sure whether it's enough or not. Obviously, it really depends on your chart. So if we talk about, for instance, man, obviously man has got a higher need for sexual activities. And that is going to be represented by Mars. Mars is going to be talking about your sexual dynamics. It talks about what type of experiences you need, for instance, when you are having intimacy with someone. Now, Mars, for instance, in water signs have got a tendency to have a higher need because they want to exchange emotions with the partner. Maybe in earth signs, it's going to be a little bit of a less of a libido because earth signs tend to be focusing so much on their financial needs, on their security matters. They are way too busy with work. So they usually have got a little bit less need. But when we talk about fire signs, fire is all about passion and desire. So most probably a Mars in a fire sign has got plenty of sexual needs. But the question is, and in my opinion, that's why it's very important to compare two charts to see whether they are sexually compatible or not. Because you don't want to end up in a relationship where, one has got plenty of needs, the other one doesn't have any. Eventually, we are forcing the other one into cheating on you. And both of you just going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So Moon and Mars definitely are great indicators of your sexual needs. Apart from those, the 8th house is going to be one of the indicators, as well as the 5th. So now I want to just have a little bit of a difference between those two, because I think there is a little bit of a confusion between the sex houses. So both houses, both the 5th and the 8th house rule sex. However, 2,000 years ago, when astrology really started to strive, they associated the 5th house with sex. And the reason being is because having a sexual intercourse with someone was a risk. There was no protection existing at that time. So it was a lot easier to catch any type of illnesses. Or if you didn't want to have a child because of lack of protection, obviously there was a higher chance to get pregnant as well. So 5th house pretty much about taking risks. And 200 years ago, it was a risk to have a sexual intercourse with someone. And now, obviously, in modern age, especially since Carl Jung introduced psychology, and he really based his researches on astrology. Plenty of people don't know, but actually he was an astrologer. He started associating sex with the 8th house. And the reason being is because when you have got a partner and you really want to open up your soul, obviously that's one of the ways to do that is through sexual experience.
Mm-hmm.
A man penetrates into the woman, and basically you giving out all your secrets, all your energies, and so on. So in my opinion, the main difference between the fifth and the eighth house is going to be that the fifth house is more to do with the one night stands, and eighth house is going to be something to do with more intimate type of relationship. Now, eighth
And
house is a Plutonian energy anyway, and Pluto talks about deep intimacy matters, digging deep. That's one of the keywords for Scorpio. Obviously, when you're having a one night stand, it's more about your needs
mm-hmm.
rather than wanting to share your soul with someone, right? So I do believe that at the beginning of a relationship, we tend to be living our sexual life through the fifth house. And then maybe 6 months later, when the relationship became more stable, as well as less exciting, let's not lie about it. After a while, a relationship is gonna get a little bit stale.
Mm-hmm.
The sex is going to be about the eighth house.
Now, in a chart, can you see if people have like psychological issues confusing love and sex? Does that kind of show up?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, Pluto is a very psychological planet, as well as the eighth house. So the reason why I like eighth house is because it's going to be showing you what type of blockages you might have sexually.
Okay.
Now, I'll give you an example. In many cases, you can see a Pluto and the Mars connection in a female chart. And that could be talking about sexual abuse, either in relationship or at an early age. And obviously, this is a topic, again, which women don't really want to talk about. And why is that? Because, first of all, they feel ashamed about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, very much eighth house. That's going to be the house of trust, what you are scared of, the house of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And also, um, I think we are still in that century where women blame themselves to be attacked by a man. And probably the reason being is because plenty people say that how can it happen? It doesn't really exist. But you know what? Every fourth, fifth client of mine have gone through certain elements of sexual abuse in their lives, and that's really blocking them to be able to open up for their partners.
And
And
I
I'm
think
quite shocked about the statistics.
and I think more men have been sexually abused too than what we even realize.
Oh yeah, sure,
Mm-hmm.
obviously.
Yeah.
And you know, because this is something which people started talking about. But if we really go back in time a little bit, 50 years ago, people would have never talked about this topic, that I got raped and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, now we are more a liberated century, so people started expressing their opinions, and therefore it's a completely new thing for everyone still. So people just don't believe in it. Or you might get shocked when you hear a story like that a
Mm-hmm.
baby gets raped and so on. It
Mm-hmm.
existed in the past as well. It was just not a huge hit, really. Apart from the eighth house and the fifth house, also North Node is a huge indicator in the chart. Because,
Really?
oh, sure, yeah, because North Node, if you remember when we studied about North Node, we said North Node is the planet of hunger.
Yes.
So it does show how hungry you are towards your, your karma.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's in a sexual house, for instance, fifth house, you can be very sexual. I've got, for instance, a North Node in the fifth house. So that's going to be one of the indicators of me being very sexual. Also, your rising sign is going to be quite a huge factor here to consider, because the rising sign is going to be showing you what you like, what you are interested in, or what you don't like, how you approach certain topics.
Mm-hmm.
So let's suppose I've got a Pisces rising sign. It's a water sign. Water is very much interested in sharing emotions. And one of the ways it could happen is obviously by having a sexual intercourse with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how Pisces expresses their feelings, want to serve other people. So probably these are the planets which are going to be talking about your sex drive. Now, a hard aspect to any of these could be an element of blockage indication. So for instance, the planet of blockage is Saturn. A hard aspect from Saturn to the ruler of your 8th or the 5th house could be an indication of you having sexual blockages.
Okay.
I can show you an example here.
Yeah, let's look at some charts.
If you don't mind. Just give me a second because I need to. I'm not too sure what's happening here. Oh, here you go. So for instance, I've got a chart here. You can see we've got a Pisces rising sign and then we've got moon on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the rising sign already indicates that the person is hugely emotional. It's very important for this native to be able to express their emotional needs. And obviously Pisces has got the tendency to sacrifice themselves. So now they would do anything in order for them to have that that very strong feeling that they are loved and that they can love someone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I have a look what's happening with the moon, moon is ruling the 5th house, which is the house of sex. And that ruler comes into the 1st house, which is the house of body. So that's already an indication that the person is highly sensitive towards sexual activities. Now, the 5th house is also the house of fun. So that's an indication that the person loves having fun and using the body for that. The another house which we mentioned already was the 8th house. And that would be ruled by Venus because it's a Libra house class. And Venus is in the 6th house in Leo. Now, Leo is the planet, the sign of fun. Leo is the sign of sex. So this person has got a high sex drive going on, especially Venus being in conjunction with Mars, which is the planet of penis. So therefore, it does indicate already that this person has got a huge interest in sexual activity. This is one of the ways how the person can express their energies, because Leo doesn't only talk about sexual matters, but it does talk about your self-expression. One of the ways this person communicates is through sex.
And they also have Mercury, and they also have Mercury in Leo too.
Yeah, exactly.
With communication.
We've got Mercury there too. Obviously, Mercury is the planet of communication. So one of the ways to express his feelings could be throughout those Venus and Mars conjunction. What's quite interesting to notice here is that, as I said, the blockages are going to be coming from either Saturn or Pluto, as well as Uranus. These are the psychological planets in our charts. Now we can see that there is a sign-based square, this red line here, coming towards the sexual planet, which is Venus. So there is a psychological blockage in this person's life in order for them to have a sexual intercourse with someone. So you know what? This could be an indication here that the person maybe needs to be at a party in order for them to be able to have sexual intercourse with someone. maybe a party is gonna arouse their interest in sexual activities because Leo rules parties. Also, one of the ways which the rising sign has got the tendency with that Pisces and with the moon energy, oh, I need to get drunk in order for me to enjoy sexual activities. Now,
So,
the ruler of the 8th house is in the 6th as well, which is the house of health. So this could be an indication that the person has got an unhealthy appetite towards sex, and the partner is never going to be able to satisfy that. Obviously, there are so many manifestation levels of each planet and chart. So if you've got the ruler of the 8th house in the 6th, don't think that it's going to be an indication of an unhealthy appetite towards sexual activities, but we can see more indications in this chart to claim that.
so do you see like a generational thing happening because Pluto is in Scorpio, and it's like it's a fixed water sign?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, generational planets. So the generational planets are Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and it's they usually talk about what you learn in this era, really, what you were born into. Obviously, because Pluto in Scorpio is all about sexuality. It's no wonder why this era became so sexual, because everything by the social media got emphasized. Obviously, we are quite in the Uranian type of era as well, and Uranus is all about quirkiness. It's all about eccentric powers. And having Pluto in Scorpio definitely makes us very sexual in that sense. And no wonder why most of the blockages are coming from Scorpio things, because we end up watching porns, and then you can see bigger boobs, or you can see bigger penises and so forth. And these are just making us insecure about our body. I mean, I read an article which actually fascinated me, and it was last week, that more and more men ask for penis enlargement as well at plastic surgeries.
You're kidding.
And
There's this trend too of women with and it started in the dancing community and maybe even the porn industry, but when women's labias are really long, they like to have them shortened and clipped because they think that it's unattractive. And what's happening is that women are having elective surgeries, and now doctors are even saying, well, do you have clitoral stimulation or clitoral orgasms? And women will say no. So in addition to having their labias clipped, the doctors move their clitoris to hopefully create more stimulation and more arousal by replacing their clitoris. And it's just kind of sad.
it is very sad, because I think those insecurities, and also I think the lack of knowing your body. I think that's also part of it as well. I mean, I had a client of mine, a few days ago, and without any details and charts, I'm just gonna tell you the story because I think plenty of us can learn from it. But her question was, why did my partner cheat on me? Why did he leave me? So we had a look at the chart, and then I saw someone very conservative. And we started talking about sex, which was a little bit of a problem for her, because being so conservative, it was hard for her to open up, but eventually did. And whatever I asked her, she said, "Are you crazy? I'm not going to do that." So you know, and we are living in an era where men definitely watch porn,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw all those type of positions and activities of going on, and obviously it arises their curiosity, and they want to try those things as well. Obviously, it's interesting that a man and a woman talk about this, because obviously I might have got a different point of view, and you might have, and you know, we can have a little bit of a great argument or debate about those. But one of the psychologists I read from said, and it was a lady, if you are not willing to give oral pleasure for your husband, most probably the relationship is going to die off sooner or later. I don't know whether it's true or not, but definitely it's a consideration we need to take into account.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when it comes to sexual activities, there should not be taboo at all. I think we need to have a clear conversation about what the barriers are, or what I am willing to provide and what you are willing to do. But overall, you know, when we come to terms, there should not be limitation about it. One of the advice I usually give to my clients, because especially to those ones who have got children and they have no, you know, they've got limited sexual life going on,
Mm-hmm.
to pair up with friends, and then on Thursdays my kids are gonna be going to yours, so I can have a naked night with my partner
I think it's a
without
great
any
idea.
type of issues. And then on Tuesday your kids are coming over to mine, and I'm gonna look after them, or you know, it's like a little bit of a sleepover.
Mm-hmm.
And my clients took my advice, and then they are giving me feedback. You know what, our sexual life has got so much better, thank you. We never even thought about that. Because believe it or not, everyone has got the same issue if you've got kids.
Yeah, I don't.
Try to find a way of, you know, it's not easy to pass your kids on to your parents all the time. But if you've got such an agreement with a best friend of yours,
Mm-hmm.
it's everyone's interest, right?
Well, and especially if the kids like each other, it's like, wow, it's like it's broadening your community and support, and it's creating like a different kind of family. So
Exactly. I've got another friend of mine, and um, basically, her and her husband have been sleeping separate for 3 years, because the relationship is not working anymore, and they are not having sex at all. They haven't had any for 3 years, and but they stay together because they don't want the kids to be hurt psychologically. And I said to her, do you think that those kids don't get hurt? The kids are like sponges.
mm-hmm.
They see everything, and they, you know, we create a karma within them, especially in the first 7 years of their lives. So I'm not too sure if it's a solution to stay together just because of the kids at the expense of your own, you know, happiness. Because in my opinion, kids are happy when parents are happy as well.
Well, and it's demonstrating to the children too, like lock up your feelings and not share things, and if we can demystify things and be curious and hold space for people and not judge it, and talk about it, I think that just allows the energy to flow, and that's super healing.
I guess so. I guess so. And we are in an era where people need healing, and more of them are looking for, you know, a type of a way to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just some very, or maybe just some constellation which might be giving even more or high sexual libido. Could be a Mars and the Sun conjunction, for instance, in a male chart. That could be an indication that the guy wants to become an alpha male.
What if it's
Obviously, if you
What if it's in a female's chart?
It might be an indication that you are attracting an alpha male into your life.
Okay.
And obviously, if you think about what an alpha male wants, psychologically speaking, that's going to be an insecurity there, because the person needs a continuous proof about his manhood or about his masculinity. So, you know, that's where that lovely proverb comes into the picture. Don't judge by its cover, because you never know what's happening underneath the cover.
Mm-hmm.
Or a Mars aspect to Sun, Venus, Jupiter, or Pluto, especially oppositions and squares, could be an indication of high libido. Mars and Pluto, definitely. The two sexual planets, very, very high sexual drive. Mars is the planet of sexual drive. Pluto is the planet of intimacy. So this is all about very high sexual libido. Mars and Venus could be an indication, especially at the beginning of their life. Now, very interesting, with Mars and Venus conjunction, what I have experienced is that people have got issues with orgasm. Because they come quite quickly, for instance. They have got issues of controlling, you know, how quick to come and so forth. Now, obviously, Venus talks about the sweet part of the life, and Mars is talking about the sexual experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why it gives us, again, quite a high libido. I've got Mars and Venus conjunction also.
So do I. And mine's an Aquarius, and my first astrologer reading that I had long time ago, she said that it kind of made me asexual, having that combination. Do you notice that as well?
I think what happens here is, I think they go through phases. So at one point they could be hugely sexual,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next moment, nothing at all. Now, especially air signs, because they are very intellectual, such as Aquarius,
Mm-hmm.
they've got the tendency to overthink about it. So sometimes they really need, when probably they are at the lowest point in their life, they really need some sexual activities going on. But when they have got a different type of motivation, when their mind is busy, then they forget about it. And then they have got a tendency to reprioritize things, and maybe sex is not going to be a part of it. So I'm seeing this kind of wave going on in their sexual life with the Mars and Venus conjunction.
So do transits, is it really important to look at transits in this case to understand what their waves of libido are? And
yes, it could be transits. I think in this meta progression could be working a lot better. For instance, let's suppose you've got a progressed Saturn, for instance, hitting your Mars and Venus conjunction. Saturn is being the planet of restriction. So that could be an element of restricted energy around your sexual activities. But yes, we can definitely use it with transit as well. Maybe if you've got a Jupiter coming around, then it can be an heightened activity going on. Remembering that the transits only last for a short period of time, unless we are talking about very slow-moving planets, such as Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. Okay. Jupiter might only last for 8 to 60 days.
Right.
So it's just being a little bit careful about it.
I haven't really studied progressions yet, so yeah, it'll be great.
We're gonna be learning about progression as well anyway.
Okay, awesome.
Progressions are about internal changes within us.
Okay.
The transits usually bring events.
Okay.
So that's the main difference. So that's how I would approach. Now, if you've got, let's say, a stellium going on in your 8th house or 12th house, that could be an indication of high sex drive. 8th house, because that's the house of sex. 12th house is what you do behind the scenes. 12th house could be talking about your um, bed, your hidden bed activities, basically. So if these houses are very active, it could be an indication of high sex drive also. Also the same with the moon, because moon is going to be talking about your heart desire. So your heart desire is to be connecting to someone in a sexual way. So that would be a high libido as well. Now, Gemini is a very curious sign. So Venus and Mars being in Gemini also could be an indication of high sexual drive.
So my understanding of Gemini is most people look at it as the twins, and from the Vedic perspective, because I study that in addition to Hellenistic with you, is that the original symbolism is actually of a man and a woman. So it's like the original couple, and people see it as twins. So how do you?
That's right.
Okay.
So with the Gemini symbols, basically we're talking about androgynes. So it's not the gender which is important. And to be frank, to determine gender in astrology is not easy at all. Because especially when it comes to parents, because it's not about who your father and who your mother is, but it's more to do with the roles, what they play in your life.
Yes.
Now we've got some sexual asteroids as well, which could be very fascinating. And I love working with asteroids because they definitely give an additional picture to your life. Now the sexual asteroid is going to be, for instance, Nessus. I put in bracket the numbers as well. If you want to go on astro.com, then you can have a look where yours is. Basically, all you do is I'm going to show you. You can find this little square here, and then you just have to enter the number.
Okay.
So for instance, I'm going to be having a look at the 7066. That's going to be Nessus. And then it's going to be showing where your Nessus is. Now, just a rule about the asteroids. They need to be very prominent in the chart. They need to have a conjunction maximum of a 1 degree orb with a planet, especially the conjunctions we're going to be talking about, or the most prominent one. The next one might be oppositions. I don't recommend looking at the other aspects.
Okay.
So if you have got a prominent Nessus, you might be having the tendency to attract an abusive partner. And it could be talking about actually sexual abuse as well, especially with a Mars or Pluto planet. Then very interesting, for instance, Dejanira asteroids. That could be, that's a victim asteroid. So you can become a victim of an event where your sexual powers are misused. Then you've got Sado, a sadistic nature to it. Obviously, as the name suggests, we're talking about sadomaso type of sexual activities.
Okay.
Then we've got Bacchus, very Jupiterian-like energy. So if Bacchus is very, very prominent in the chart, it might be an indication of being overly sexual. As I said there, it's living life to the fullest, to the max. So therefore, there is an element of curiosity involved here as well. Casanova, well, as the name suggests, someone who really knows how to talk the panties off. So we're definitely talking about a charmer, someone who's got sweet songs. And it's very hard to resist Casanova. Yeah, I didn't put it there, but also the same with Lucifer. Lucifer is very good at that as well. They've got a very strong sexual charm around them. Then Lust, for instance. could be a very good indication of something to do with your sexual life, because that's going to be the asteroids of sex drive.
Okay.
So a very prominent, especially with Venus or Jupiter or even Uranus, Pluto, you can be very highly sexual. Then you've got Nymphae. Obviously, as the word already suggests, it's something to do with nymphomania, which brings in, you know, that the sex is always on your minds.
I haven't studied asteroids much. Do any of these kind of travel in clusters, and are they?
The asteroids are fixed points in the chart.
Oh, they're fixed points? Okay.
Yes. So you are always going to have a look whether they get activated in your natal chart, or by transit or progression or solar arc, whichever timing technique you use.
Okay.
But let's say if by progression or solar arc, you're going to have your Sado or your Nessus getting activated, it doesn't mean that you are going to get raped.
Okay.
If it's not in your natal chart, then it's not going to happen.
Okay.
So in order for you to have something happening, you need to have a very prominent one of these asteroids going on. So don't get scared if Pluto is going through your Nessus by solar arc at the moment, because your natal chart is your natal promise.
Right. If you see like the second one, Dejanira in the woman's chart, and how do you recommend she walks in life, or how do you even bring that up to her and say, you know, I see this in your chart, and because it's something delicate to talk about as a role of a victim, and they're already sensitive to that to begin with. But I would also like to help empower a person to know, so they know this about themselves, so they can actually strengthen their sovereign beingness.
I think a role of an astrologer is to try to help the client as much as possible. So if you see a very prominent possibility of becoming a victim, I would definitely be asking questions whether they have ever felt that maybe on their worst day they still attract sexual attention from the other gender. Scorpio rising sign, for instance, has got this tendency of attracting guys even on their worst day, because they've got this magnetic force around them. And you can be on your worst possible day ever, somehow people still turn around and look at you as a sexual. Now, obviously, it really depends on your confidence level. In case of a Scorpio rising sign, for instance, you've got Sagittarius on the second house cusp. Second house talks about your confidence level, and the ruler, Jupiter, would be talking about how much confidence you've got. Now, if it's very hurt, you might not even notice these people turning around you and whistling around you and so on. So I would be asking the clients whether they experienced these type of things before. If not, maybe the person has got a tendency to become a victim in a different way. Maybe not necessarily in a sexual situation, but maybe they become a victim in the relationship, and they attract, you know, sexually overdriven type of characteristics, or yeah, any type of victim you can really become, right? Well, so it's not just necessarily sex.
Well, and this is why it's so important for the people listening out there to look at the entire chart and not just at this one particular asteroid and think the worst.
Exactly. And also, you know, those aspects could be an indication whether it's something you are going to be noticing, or how are you going to feel about it. You know, at the end of the day, the most important part of the chart is the 10 planets and the 12 sign and the aspects. The asteroids are just giving an additional picture, an additional feeling to the chart so that you can narrow the topics down a little bit.
Very good.
So I put, for instance, something to do with the sexual abuse, because I think it is definitely worth talking about. So the sexual wounding and the transformation belongs to Pluto. And Pluto also could be an indication in your chart what type of sexual healer you need. So that would be the more positive side of Pluto. What type of sexual partner actually you need. And obviously, once you start healing, what happens is that Pluto is going to get transformed into their higher self. So you are going to be experiencing Pluto's negative aspects less and less, if it makes sense. Definitely, Pluto connection to Venus or Mars could be an indication of sexual abuse. Mars being the impulsive, violent type of energy, and Venus is the planet of charm and protection. So when Pluto comes along, maybe your protection drops, and that's where the sexual abuse could be coming from. Very intense emotional houses getting activated. So the Pisces, the Cancer, the Scorpio houses, that could be an indication there. But Mars, Pluto could be indication of an angry father as well, that you've got anger management issues from somewhere. Now, how anger works, that you project the anger onto others, and then basically you are going to be attracting these people yourself. A Venus-Pluto connection could be talking about a compulsive relationship. Now, what I usually tell my students, and if you remember, use the positive energies of the planets. You know, Pluto has got, every single planet has got good and bad qualities. So Pluto is very good at digging deep. Maybe you should become a private investigator. Pluto is very good at handling money. So try to work with the planet's positive energies so that you kind of cut away the negative meaning to them. You are not giving a possibility for those negative energies to take over your life. Also, Jupiter, Neptune involvements, hard aspect could be an indication as well. Now, the reason being is because Neptune is related to drug and alcohol type of issues. So obviously, once you take drugs and you drink, then you drop your level of protection to a minimum, and then you become a weak victim of someone, right? And Jupiter has got a tendency to become a little bit narcissistic. So that's where that case could be coming from. Now, if Jupiter and Neptune get tagged along, then obviously Jupiter increases the negative energies of Neptune. So plenty of drugs, plenty of drinks, plenty of obsession, and so forth. But there are so many manifestation levels, so it is definitely worth having a look at your own charts. Maybe, so you had some people's name in mind to have a look at. If you give me date of birth, then I'm more than happy to.
Let me pull it up here. I have...
Maybe one of those sex symbols, obviously.
Well, there was a porn star that I was looking at. His name is Rocco Siffredi. And his birth information, he's born on May 4th, 1964. 11:30 a.m. And it's in Italy.
He was born in Italy?
Lanciano.
D.
Lanciano.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know the person, so I don't have much background of this person, but we can, one of the things I definitely would have a look at is what the rising sign is. So in this chart, for instance, we've got a Leo rising sign. If you know a little bit of an astrology, then you know that Leo is all about shining. It's all about stage, all about fun. And it's the natural ruler of the fifth house as well. So this person loves being in the spotlight. I usually tend to call the Leo as an attention seeker, and not as a negative meaning to them, but somehow they've got a tendency to drag the attention onto themselves. Now, another interesting stuff here is that the ruler of the rising sign is going to be in the 10th house, and it's in Taurus as well. So now Taurus talks about pleasure. And the person is doing a type of job which gives them a sense of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And Sun has got a conjunction going on with the ruler of the 8th house, which is the house of sex. And also Jupiter rules the 5th house as well, which is the house of sex. So this person actually can do sex as a profession. And most probably because he's got this tendency to want to show his manhood, he wants to show his element of, masculinity, and it's very important for him to be able to shine in front of others.
So
as well as stability, because he's got a very strong Taurus going on, and Taurus is all about financial stability. I've got a very strong feeling that at one point of his life, he didn't really have money, and then he turned towards sex as to have a source of money or income coming into his life. And the reason why I'm saying that is because he's got Chiron in the 8th house, and Chiron is the emotional wounds, what we tend to be picking up on during our lives, as well as the emotional pain what we are bringing from other lives. Now, 8th house could be talking about sexual energies. So he might have been abused sexually. He might have been disgraced because of what he does. And because there is Saturn in the same sign, which could be an indication of a father figure, actually, I can imagine that his father said, "You are not my son anymore." And this type of energy forced him into finding different ways of making money. Another indication here, which is quite interesting, the 2nd house talks about how you make your money. Now, there is Uranus and Pluto there. Uranus is the planet of weird things, unique things. Pluto is the planet of sex. So I'm making money through sex.
I wonder where
of course, this person could have made money through banking as well. So there are plenty of manifestation level, but now we know that we're talking about a porn star. So, we can actually take that into account.
I'm kind of wondering where his part of fortune is. And also in Wikipedia, he's known as the Italian Stallion is his name. And he's been in over 1,300 movies.
Oh, wow. He's got a little bit of a stamina going on for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, part of fortune is in the 10th house as well. Oh, probably he made a fortune out of it. He must have been very popular because part of fortunes is extremely good in the 10th house, very good in Taurus. And you know what? This person even has got conjunction towards Jupiter and the Sun as well. So whatever he does for work, he does it very well. And he gets tons of money for it. So I guess we're talking about someone who has been quite popular in their life. Very interesting because he's also having Lilith in the 5th house. And Lilith is also a very sexual energy, as well as it talks about your dark side.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, the 5th house is the house of sex, but also it is the house of inner childhood. I do have a feeling that we're talking about a father here who might have had maybe some type of alcohol issues or addiction type of issues going on. I might be talking about a father who dealt with this guy very, very well, in a bad way, let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the reasons he might have taken up such a job.
Well, and I'm noticing too, he has Rahu in the 12th house, or the North Node in the 12th house. So that's all about bed pleasures. And it's kind of like this karmic thing that he needs to do in this lifetime is to deal with bed pleasures.
Exactly. North Node is a point in your chart where you should be heading towards to in this life. The sooner you get your karmic point activated, the better quality life you're probably gonna be having. And now that North Node is ruled by Moon, and Moon in the 7th house. 7th house talks about radios, television, other people, an element of publicity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's in Aquarius as well. Aquarius tends to do unique things. And Aquarius talks about publicity as well itself. So no wonder why there is an element of wanting to wanting to be successful at whatever he does.
Wow, this is a really interesting chart.
There is an interesting chart. I've never even heard of him, and I've never even had a look at his chart. But definitely the traits are worth having. I mean, it's good to see. If you don't mind, I'm just going to have a look at if he's got any prominent asteroids going on.
Oh, that'll be fun. So
I was
the smooth talker.
157. Pardon?
And the Casanova would be kind of interesting too.
Yeah, I'm just going to put in actually all of them. 18 to 30. I mean, there are about 26,000 asteroids. So I don't recommend, if someone wants to study astrology, I don't recommend starting with asteroids because they could be hugely confusing.
It would blow my mind up.
Yeah. And we've got 8570. Here you go. If he's got any prominent one, of course he does. He's got Casanova in conjunction with Jupiter, which is the ruler of the 8th and the 5th house. Also, there is Mercury there as well. Mercury rules technology, communication, marketing, PR, and so forth. Yeah, Casanova is very prominent here.
And so the orb for these is 1 degree.
That's okay. 1 degree, very maximum 2. Don't go overboard with it because asteroids are, they don't have any lights. So they are not like stars that they can, radiate lights out of themselves.
Okay.
And therefore, obviously, they don't have such strong magnetic force around them either. So that's the reason why I'm giving only 1 degree orb to them. Also, Dejanira in conjunction with Neptune as well, which is interesting because that would be the victim asteroids. So I'm just wondering, that was my gut feeling at the beginning.
Oh,
That
wow.
if you guys remember, he might have been a victim of some type of abuse in the family. I'm sensing that very strongly. So I
Mm-hmm.
might Google that later on and then see if that's the case here.
And so he's in, and that's in opposition with, what is it? Is it
Well, maybe with Sun,
with the sun?
because Sun is on 13, almost 14 degree. So that's the only one which has got a 1 degree orb there.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Curious.
interesting chart, definitely.
Do you have somebody more modern to consider and to look at? It chose like
Um,
it chose an, you know, definitely an older
well,
card.
there is, which is a very interesting chart, but I'm not too sure whether it's worth confusing others. I had a look at Monica Lewinsky's case a couple of weeks ago, but that was a Davison chart. I had a look. So
Mm,
Davison chart is basically a way to compare to people's life and then see how it's going to work out. So
mm-hmm.
basically, you get one chart, and it is fascinating how strongly you can see basically their um, sexual attraction between each other. So I can show you that actually because I've got it somewhere already printed. So here is their chart. So basically, it's a Davison chart, but don't worry about it. You treat it as a normal chart. Now, what's quite interesting here to see is that they've got a Libra rising sign. So they get into a relationship, which is very interesting. Now you can see that the sun is in the 5th house in Aquarius. So it does indicate sun in the chart would be an indication what type of, where the relationship is heading. Now it's in the 5th house in Aquarius. So we can see there is a romantic type of relationship going on in between them. But it's Aquarius, so that could be quite a unique type of twist to the relationship. Now, what's also interesting to see here is that the ruler of the midheaven, which is Moon, falls into the 8th house, the house of sex. So no wonder why Bill Clinton and Monica's sexual relationship went viral, because the midheaven is involved into the matter as well. And the midheaven is basically talks about, you know, how you are seen
Mm-hmm.
as a person, as an individual. And they are seen as a sexual couple, basically. So that's quite an interesting indication there. And then the ruler of the rising sign, which is Venus, has got a conjunction going on with Saturn in the 4th house. And the 4th house is the end of a matter. It's not just only about, you know, family and legacy and roots and so forth, but how one thing is going to end up. Well, it didn't end up quite nicely, as we know the
Mm-hmm.
story, because Saturn is the planet of hierarchy. Um, and Venus, with the Venus, we can start building a wall in front of us. So it could actually indicate a deep motion in the career with the Capricorn energy involved as well. But also, it could be easily indicating, you know, that at the end of a relationship is going to be an emotional turmoil, because Saturn and Venus are two completely different energies. So
Well,
one is a cold planet, the
mm-hmm.
other one is a warm planet. So they are pulling apart, really. So that's quite interesting to see that.
Well,
I think it is, and there are so many other indications in this chart. I
well,
just don't want to be.
and I also see here's Rahu in the 12th house again.
Yeah, Rahu in the 12th house again. Um, what's interesting here is that obviously it's in Virgo, which does bring in the element of service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Monica was obviously an apprentice. Um, before they started doing all their businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an element of service going on in between the couple. And because we've got quite a strong Capricorn energy here, it would be an indication that one is going to be, you know, a boss of another.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the ruler of the South Node is Jupiter, which is in Sagittarius. So I am your mentor, basically. And it's in the 3rd house as well. So that's the house of apprenticeship anyway.
Right. Right.
So there are so much more indication here of what was going on, but because it's a different technique, I don't really want to confuse you guys, but definitely we can see that even though it was denied to have happened, anything between them, the chart shows, I think it did happen.
That's really interesting. Wow. This has all been super wonderful, and I'm so grateful that you've taken a little bit longer than what I thought we were going to take. So,
Yeah, sorry, once I start talking, I cannot finish.
no, it's okay. I love it. So how can people find you, and what kind of classes are you offering? And I hear you're working on something a little bit kind of something cool that should be coming out in the next month or two. Do you want to talk about that?
Hopefully in the next 2 months, I'm working on I'm working on an application actually, which is gonna be able to give maybe a little bit of an insight of synastry. So
Mm-hmm.
comparing 2 charts and then see how it might play out. But I just don't want to give away just yet.
Okay.
I'm teaching astrology. I've got my own website, which is AstroViktor.com. Are you gonna be able to put it maybe in the
Yeah,
link below?
I'll put all your information in the
And then
description.
I'm offering some classes as well. I love teaching. Astrology is my passion, so definitely one of the ways I want people to, you know, grow is to get to know their chart a lot more and then utilize it to the fullest. Because I think astrology can help you a lot to manifest the best out of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And who doesn't want to live the best?
Exactly.
Right? So
Exactly.
astrology is a great tool for it.
You know, and I think you're an amazing teacher, and I like that we actually meet instead of just doing videos, and that we have a small intimate class, like no more than 6 people typically. Is that
Yeah,
true?
6 people.
Yeah, so it's really nice to be able to go on this journey and to have this really beautiful container, and I feel really blessed to study with you.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you for having me. I hope it gives some people actually a little bit of an insight about their sexual life. Obviously, when I did this webinar and the slides, I was teaching it for 6 hours. So that's pretty intense. Obviously, we had about an hour to discuss this. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't go into details so much.
No, that's beautiful. So yeah. So if you like this video, just go ahead and like this button and subscribe to my channel. And you also have a channel, so I will send a link to your YouTube channel as well. And I look forward to seeing you in class next Tuesday.
See you on next Tuesday. Thank you
Okay.
very much, everyone, for listening to me.
Thank
And
you.
have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.